So two incidents happened that helped us flesh out this movement model a little bit and figure out what the different parts of the movement is. Remember, we're talking about a movement here, not an organization, but a movement, which is comprised of many organizations. So first of the two incidents happened actually here in Madison, where we did these actions in May of 2010. Right? We had a couple of very exciting actions back to back. It wasn't intended that way, we just forgot one got found, but 2 Mondays in a row we had these actions, led the news every night for almost a week. The first action we had a land liberation, the second action which was found and the family was found, and then the second action was a land liberation done like live on TV, which was very exciting. I was here for the second one. It was very exciting and people knew about what Take Back the Land was doing, Take Back the Land Madison. It was just amazing, amazing work. It still stands out as some of the most significant work that has happened in this time. And this was happening before Occupy. So this was a very exciting thing that happened, and it was still extremely cutting edge. So that happened, I came here, we met, we talked, we did this, we did that, we got a lot of attention, good, bad, and not indifferent, but good and bad attention. And then I went home and continued to work with this group and other groups. And then one day I'm sitting at home, and M calls and says, you're not gonna believe this, we just got a call from the mayor of Madison, Wisconsin, saying we want to sit down and meet with you. What should we do? And I'm like, I don't know what we should do. So it turns out that even though we were able to engage in these incredibly effective positive action campaigns, we did not know what to do if the mayor called and said, we want to meet with you. We had no idea what to say to the mayor. I think I even said, protest them. Yes. Right? Because we didn't know what to do with them besides protesting. That's the only thing, that's the only trick we had in our bag. So we actually didn't know what to do and we didn't know what to say. And it turns out also that there are plenty of people, I think, who do know what to say to the mayor, who have a bunch of ideas of what to say. Because the mayor said, I don't agree with everything you said, but you said, one of the things you did say was that the laws are protecting corporations, not people. Come in here, show us those laws, and what should we change? And I think, so we didn't know how to...
Which laws?
We didn't know which laws specifically. Some of them we did, but also the reality is we're not just trying to change a whole series of laws, some laws. We're trying to change something much bigger than that. But there are people who I think know what to say, but those people don't get to go meet with the mayor. So it's kind of a little ironic that the people who know what to say didn't get to meet with the mayor, and they're not willing to do the kind of things that you want to do with the mayor. And then the people who are willing to do the kind of things that get you met with the mayor don't know what to say. So it also shows some of the limits of our movement as well, is that we have people doing different things which should be complementary or not. So the question became for us as an organization, but really more importantly for us as a movement, what happens if you engage in a positive action campaign and you win and the mayor calls and says, what are your demands? Then what do you do? That led to our second movement area, which is public policy. So what are the series of rules, the series of laws, the series of regulations that we would have to have changed in order to elevate housing to the level of a human right? What would the legal structure have to look like? What would the economy have to look like? What are all the series of things that would have to happen? So again, it seems like there are some people who know what these things are, at least have some idea. Certainly they wouldn't know by themselves. There's a lot of knowledge and wisdom that are in our communities that are not in these academic circles. But the suits who occupy this area number 2 of the movement have some ideas about what to say, but they are not able to get those things done. Which is why we think the positive action campaigns are so important, because we can then get those things done, but then we don't know what to say to them. And it also turns out that the people who engage in area number 1 oftentimes don't really, if you really ask them, don't actually want to meet with the mayor and negotiate. They want to meet with the mayor and say, go to hell, mayor. But they don't want to meet with the mayor and negotiate and compromise and et cetera. That's fine. In fact, in many ways, that might actually be better. And then the other thing that we found out was that when we had a particular incident in Rochester, is that when those who are engaged in area number 1 try to negotiate with area number 2, even if they're really good at area number 1, they kind of suck at area number 2. Right? They're just not that good at negotiating at it. They're just not, and not that they can't get good at it, but they just weren't that good. So anyways, that was one of the questions that so in Miami, where we had these actions, you saw a little bit of the film clip there from the Michael Moore movie Capitalism, A Love Story. In the video, we had a family who lived in a house for 20-something years. They were foreclosed on. They got evicted on a Friday. The family spent the weekend living in a bread truck in the parking lot of a supermarket. And then that Monday, we moved them right back into the same house from which they were evicted on a Friday. The police came and we did a standoff with them. It lasted a couple of hours and they got in their car and they left. So, and that happened on February 19th, 2009, and they're still in the house today. So they've been there for quite some time. It's good, right? But 6 months later, after they were in the house, and we were ready to defend them, we were, we were ready to do whatever it took to keep them in the house. And I think the bank at some point got a sense that we're not going to be able to move this man. The Michael Moore movie hadn't come out yet, but there was rumors that it was going to be in the movie. So the bank, I think, had some sense they were not going to be able to get this family out of the house. So my cell phone rings, pick up the phone, and it is U.S. Bank. It's the bank that foreclosed on the family and evicted them out. And they said, look, don't call anybody, don't call the media, don't protest us, we don't want to do that. We want to give you the house for free. We're only calling to find out who we should make the deed out to. Make it out to you, make it out to your family, make it out to take back the land, who should we make it? And we were like, I don't know who we should make it out to. And we literally didn't have it. And when Take Back the Land and I met about it, he said, okay, look, they want to give us the house. Do we want to own the house? We were like, what? We don't want to own a house. Yeah. We take houses. We don't own houses. So it also turned out the people who want to do these kind of positive action campaigns do not want to be landlords, right? So the other thing that happened was the family didn't want it for a number of reasons. There were some fines on the house that they weren't ready to take. Take Back the Land didn't want it. We don't think that we should own land as a group. But we did feel like someone should take it, but we lost the opportunity to get the house because we were not, we didn't know what to do with it. But it did bring up the important movement question, which was, what happens if you engage in a positive action campaign and you win, and the bank calls and they say, you can have the house, we don't want it, this is too much trouble, this is more trouble than worse. Then what do you do? So that created for us the third movement area, which is, we call the third way, or more properly, it's called alternative structures. What are the alternative structures of land control that we have? So right now, when you think about land ownership, we usually think about it one of two ways. Either it's private ownership, an individual or a corporation or a bank, or it's public, like a post office or a park that is owned by a government. We think that at the end of this particular historic time that we find ourselves in, we're going to have emerged from that, not a private ownership, not a public ownership, but some kind of third way, some kind of alternative structure of controlling land, which will be a democratically controlled community land trust, where communities would get together and say, here we have this amount of land, we need so much farmland, we need so much housing, we need so much business land, this is what we are going to decide to do with this space. And the communities will do that in a way that they can't sell it off to corporations, no one can become a millionaire off of it, etc. So then this would then be some kind of democratically controlled community land trust. And those are some of the, we need to figure out some of the specifics about that. We have figured some of the things out, and we'll talk about some of those today. We don't have this completely figured out, and we don't need to have it completely figured out. What we do know in terms of important principles is that communities have to be able to express democratic control over land there. But that might look differently here than it does somewhere else. So for example, a lot of land trusts, the way they operate is that they have, there really are two real models, where one of them is that the land trusts cover a geographical area, and everyone who lives in that area is a member. So they go from this street to this street, this avenue to that avenue, everyone who lives there is a member, and then they vote on a board. The other way to do it is that they do the one-third, one-third, one-third. One-third are people who live in the geographic area. One-third are just the people who live in those houses that are in the land trust. And then a third is like government officials, something like that. But it's made, so either one of those could work. Or people might say, okay, we want people who are in this geographical area plus stakeholders in the community, like we want churches to have a seat. Not the whole church, but church gets one seat, or small businesses get a seat, or whatever, or community organizations, for example, like if Take Back the Land, Madison, engages in some actions and wins some houses, then maybe Take Back the Land should have a seat on some of these land trusts. It was responsible for getting them in the first place. So there are many models that could potentially work. We are not stuck on any of them so long as they have some level of, a high level of democratic control over communities. And again, that might look differently in one community than it does in another. We'll talk about that in a little more detail later anyhow. So these are the three primary areas of the movement. Not the organization we're building, but the movement that we are building and trying to build. But the question is then now, and then there are some community land trusts now, and there are some people who are thinking about this. The extent to which these areas exist now, the question is, what is the difference between these three areas just being out there floating around versus them being forged into one movement? What's the difference between this just being a bunch of random crap in inside of four walls versus this being a meeting room with chairs laid out in a circle and a projector going one particular direction and clocks and etc. What is the difference between a piece of steel and an actual spear? What holds those things together? What turns it? What transforms it from just these elements floating out into space into something that is coherent, something that's moving in the same direction? So that becomes then the fourth movement area, which is collaboration and facilitation space. And that the primary responsibility, the collaboration and facilitation space would then have two responsibilities. You go to the next one. The first one would be to collaboration and facilitation among the three areas. In other words, make sure that those who are doing this work are talking to the people who are doing this work, and those who are here are talking to the folks here, and that there's accountability among them. That if there is some hardcore direct action going on, and then as a result we win the chance to negotiate, these people are not selling out these people. Right? So how do we do that? The level of collaboration and facilitate, make sure that everyone agrees on the principles, agrees on the objectives, and we're actually in the same movement. We just aren't in some uneasy alliance. And then the second job here is because the people who are in this group and the organizations that are in this movement area are going to be chronically underfunded, chronically under-resourced, is providing direct support services to this group here. Having conferences, having meetings, providing support, any kind of support that could happen, technical support, communication support, writing press releases. If you've got people who are willing to take a rest to defend someone from their home, you don't want to take them off the battlefields because they have to write a press release or because they have to upload a video to YouTube. There should be people who would be willing to do that part of the movement while these folks are willing to do their part of the movement. Right? So then these are the four movement areas in terms of it. So what does that look like then in real life and real practice? So movement area one is take back the land significantly, but the reality is right now this is also a space that is significantly shared with a lot of Occupy groups. Right, who are willing to engage in eviction defense, willing to engage in land liberation, and other things. Public policy, we do not have a really good partner here, although we think we are developing one here, so we think we're going to have a solid policy partner coming up in the next few months. The one who's been doing the primary work around some of the community land trusts, we do have a couple of groups who we're getting information from, but the main one who's bottom line in that is NESRI, which is a National Economic and Social Rights Initiative, a human rights organization out of New York City. And then in area number four, that is, with the support services, we have several groups who are doing this, but some of the more significant ones are the Economic, Social, Cultural Rights Network out of New York, but they're an international organization, International Alliance of Inhabitants. There's also the U.S. Alliance of Inhabitants, again, an international organization that focuses on anti-eviction work. Center for Constitutional Rights provides legal support. Ruckus does some training. U.S. Human Rights Network is another human rights organization. In terms of the facilitation and collaboration space, but also then collaborating and coordinating this support work, is Movement Catalyst, which is a 501c3 organization. That's the one that myself and Anna work for. And we think we have a unique spot in this movement because of the fact that we came out of the experience of Take Back the Land. That means that we have a high level of trust from the people who are in here who, but with good reason, by the way, are often mistrustful of the groups that are here. So Movement Catalyst then is taking on the responsibility for coordinating these relationships in a significant way, although not exclusively. We're not the only ones doing it, but we are taking on some of that responsibility, and also just trying to coordinate the forces that are figuring this stuff out, the policy things and the alternative structure. In terms of figuring out the policy work, a couple of things about that. We're going to have to identify what are the series of laws that have to exist in order to transform this society from the one that it is now, which is that corporations or individuals who have the most money can buy whatever they want, and people who do not have enough money can live under a bush. Right? So what are the laws that would have to change in order to look like that? So we need to create model laws, model policies, even above laws, that would then answer or try to answer some of these questions. Most of the best practices, well, more directly, there's none of the best practices of this that are in the United States. of the best laws that exist and the best rules and the best policies, not one of them we found to be in the United States. They're all outside of the U.S. But that just requires something. We think that this is going to also happen. The policy work is going to happen on 3 levels. One is transactional, which is just having to do specifically with the campaign that's at hand. The second is transitional. What are the worst laws? How do we get rid of those? How do we implement some laws that will protect people a little bit and do that? And then the final is transformative. What are the rules and policies and things that have to be in place in order to completely transform this part of the economy from one in which whoever has the most money gets to have as many houses they want, and whoever doesn't have money gets to live on the street, into something that is human-centered rather than capital-centered. So in the same way that there was this big debate not too long ago about how healthcare would go, and some were hoping that it would fundamentally transform healthcare in a way that there would be a single-payer system, and that would be the law. We would want to do some kind of rough equivalent with housing, where everyone would have access to decent housing that they could afford. But we're not there yet. And then we have all kinds of things that we're moving with some of the community control over land. So just say real quick about community control over land. The objective is community control over land. How that manifests really doesn't matter to us, as long as that the democratic control of the land is something that's exercised. But with that said, we're working on developing some models for that. In Rochester, New York right now, we have 2 families who we're working with who are negotiating to try to get their houses handed over to community land trusts. So we have a movement going on now where some organizations are engaged in land liberation work or eviction defense work, and their demands invariably have been, to this point, reduce principal reduction. You have a mortgage, this family has a mortgage, they can't afford to pay it, we want you to take $25,000 or $50,000 or even $100,000 off of their mortgage. That's been the demand. We're not against that as a demand, but it does have a lot of limitations to it, which we're happy to talk about in great detail if we want to do that. But we don't think that sufficiently covers what we need to do. We need to not only find ways of giving banks that already got bailouts and already got insurance money, finding ways of giving them even more money. We need to instead say to the banks that they should hand over their vacant foreclosed homes, and even the foreclosed homes that still have the families in them, over to a community land trust, rather than to the banks and rather than even to the individual families. So the benefit of having it in a community land trust, of course, is that it's not only going to go to the one family, but it'll go to the entire community, and that community could then keep that housing affordable over a long period of time. If the house goes to the individual family, next time the housing market goes up and out of control, that family can then just sell it for whatever they want to. And that means we have fought a movement in order to make sure that one family gets to sell a house for as much profit as they possibly can, which is exactly, by the way, what got us in this mess in the first place. If we have, by contrast, we put this house in a community land trust, we say to the family, look, you are not going to get rich off this house. However, you're also not going to get evicted from this house. You get to stay here, you will pay something that you can afford, and in exchange for paying something that you can afford and you're not getting evicted from your home, even though the police were ready to come here and evict you, we defended you so that this place, we didn't defend you because of you, we defended you because we wanted affordable housing for everyone, including the family that's going to come and live here after yours. All right, so that's what we would. All right, so we have right now, and I'm sure all of you have seen these, where you have families facing eviction, either Take Back the Land affiliated or occupies or whoever engaged in eviction defense. And as a result of this eviction defense, they win the family a principal reduction. They say, here are demands. Our demands are, let's take care of this family by giving them principal reduction, right? So I think at least 2 things are going to happen in order for this movement to evolve to the next level. One is we're going to have to evolve from saying we want to take care of this one individual family to saying we want to take care of the entire community. And the demand will have to move from get this family principal reduction and new mortgage to we want this house handed over to the land trust. And then this family they can either own the house on top, which happens in land trusts. And of course we can if this is something you want to talk about, we can talk in excruciating detail about what land trusts are and how they work. But one of the models, of course, is that one would be that the land trust would own the land and also own the house on top of the land. But the other one would be that the land trust owns the land and the family owns the house on top of the land. So the family would still own the house but wouldn't be able to sell it for as much as they want. So then the demands here would be significantly stepped up, and it would actually be a transformative demand. And the houses will be handed over from the banks, these assets will be handed over from the banks. So that's one. And this is happening right now where you engage in action, you win the action, and this is your demand. So that's one, we need to beef up this demand and make it more significant in a way that can help more people. And then when we start doing this for vacant homes as well, then we can actually significantly address and potentially even solve the crisis that we have now, which is shortage of, apparent shortage of houses available. But we also think that's too limiting, even if we just win that. The reality is, if we engage, let's say in Madison, you do 1,000 campaigns, 1,000 eviction defenses, and you win 1,000 times and get 1,000 families, prevent them from getting it. Then even then, you all have only won help for 1,000 people, or 1,000 families. Because you haven't changed any of the laws that got them there in the first place in the way that they were there. So we think that the demands then are going to have to become two-track demands, where we're going to say, okay, we won the action. The banks are going to say, what are your demands? We're going to say, we have two demands. One is you hand over the house to community land trust, and second is that we have these changes in public policy. We have to have this law change, and we have to say, this is the law, this is what it says now, this is what we want to change to. And we have to, so one big major step up is to start saying that publicly. And even though, because what's happening when we win here is we're saying, this is a victory, we won, the fight is over. We didn't say the fight is not over, we only won one of our two demands, we need the other demand met. That's one is just saying that. The other is, we're going to actually have to be in a situation where the bank is going to say, okay, we'll give you the house, you can have it, but the government's going to say, we're not going to change the law. And we have to say, you know what, we're not ending the protests. We're not accepting the house until you also change the law. And that will be a significant step up. And of course, that's not going to be possible when we're only doing one eviction defense at a time. It's only going to be possible when we're doing, let's say, 500 eviction defenses at the same time. We have 500 houses, and we say, this is not 500 deals, this is one deal. We get all 500, and we change these sets of laws at the exact same time. So that's where we think the movement is headed, and that's what we have to organize ourselves towards in order for us to achieve those objectives of housing as a human right and community control of land. Right? I think so this model is the one that we're using when we're thinking about the national work. But this model can actually be replicated for the local work also. We have a local group engage in positive action, and of course you can, in theory, have one organization doing more than one movement area, but you probably would want them split up in at least three, like this group doing this, another group doing this, maybe this group doing this, and then have other groups doing this. You certainly want a separate group doing the support services. So what you don't want is, let's say you have to take back the land Madison, you do an eviction defense, someone gets arrested, you don't want to then be representing yourselves in court. You want to get a lawyer to represent you in court, right? And if you have some specific things that need to be done, you want those who have to. So I think the extent to which you can get social services, which many times we need to have that happen through here, not through here. So we'll take back the land Miami. When we first started liberating homes and moving families in, we had one of the early homes where we moved the family in, had them stay with them, went to go see them the next morning, and we're like, well, how was your night? You're in a new house, and there's like, to be honest, it's a little creepy. There's no furniture in the house, and we're talking, there's a little bit of the echo and a lot, and we realized that even though we did great work here, they would not have stayed in the home if we could not get them furniture to stay there. But now we wanted to find more empty houses. And we have people who are willing to take a rest, and so we didn't want to take the people who are willing to do this off the playing field so they can go look for couches and go buy baby formula and whatever. But this action would not have been successful if all we did was this, and we did not get couches and baby formula. So it turns out the couches and baby formula were just as important as opening up the houses, and we couldn't win one without having the other. One didn't make sense without the other. We couldn't do this without the couches and baby formula, and we couldn't have couches and baby formula without doing this, otherwise it's just a service organization. So there needs to be some entity who would then take on the responsibility of either directly meeting the needs of the families who are here, or identifying those support services who would be willing to meet the needs of the family here. What you don't want is you don't want to suck up all the resources of the group that's doing this, so that they have to do it. There has to be some kind of social agencies, social service agencies who you can have a relationship with who can meet those needs. But you should not be doing that yourself. Take Back the Land Madison should not be providing social services.